My name is Ziad and I'm in my third year of medieval studies. Before I start, I want to apologize for my voice. I had a really terrible flu and I can barely talk. But I thank Steven so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about my experience.
Well said.
This just happened yesterday, so I should have told him. Anyways. Before I start talking about my experience, I'd like to mention a little bit about my background. So first of all, I'd like to say that this overseas learning experience was the most exciting travel experience I've ever done in my life. And I'm no stranger to traveling. I was born and raised in Baghdad, Iraq. When I was 13-year-old, I left the country with my family and lived in Syria where I lived in Syria for 5.5 years. After 5.5 years, the country was descending to the chaos of civil war, so I had to flee the country, and I managed to come here to Canada. That was like 4 years ago. When I came here, I was very blessed with the opportunity of joining the University of Waterloo, where classes are much different from how school is in traditional areas. So the students here are encouraged to think and research instead of just staying on the receiving end of the lecture. And such a class was, of course, Steven's crusading course, which got me to be very interested in medieval studies.
He actually told me my translations of the Quran were imprecise, and he took issue with some of them.
And through Stephen, I knew about the castle, and I thought of applying to study the castle, which was kind of a weird idea for me because I'm still not a Canadian citizen. I have my Iraqi passport, but this application allowed me to actually go to England at this time, which if I go like 3 years ago wouldn't even think it's possible. So this trip is definitely one of a lifetime, and that is because it allowed me to do my passion, which is study history, engage in archaeology, and participate in the local culture and all that, and do all that in England, which is so fascinating because it's one of the greatest, one of the civilizations, or sorry, countries that contributed a lot to the world. So I'm going to be talking about three main things. The first thing is the field school experience. The second is archaeology, and three, the exploration part of my trip. First, I would like to say that from my experience, it seems like that traditional learning in itself is normally just dry and confined within the classroom. And it's much like talking to a friend on the phone, but to actually go to the sites and have actual interaction in the sites and to actually see these things you read in the books is more like visiting the friend face to face. It gives you a sense of the place and a much more deeper experience. So in order to do that, so I went to the castle on the summer of 2015, so the year before Daphne and Steve went. And the places we went to were so many, but among them, I couldn't list them all, but among them were Pevensey Castle, Bunser Farm, Bath, Caerleon, Westow, Anglo-Saxon Village, Sutton Hoo. Well, there's a long list, and a lot of abbeys and cathedrals and churches. It was fantastic. So, again, through books, we can read about the Roman technology and how sophisticated they were, but you can never really have a full grasp of it, like standing up in front of a 2,000-year-old Roman wall, or to go to actual Roman bath, which this trip allowed me to do. So some of the places we went to were the Bunser Ancient Farm, which is on the right, and the one thing that we were encouraged to do is basically think outside the box and make connections. So we went to these sites. We had a very good knowledge of the material. So we touched the walls. We saw the thatch roof. The walls are considerably primitive. They are made of wattle and dog. And you can go inside and you can see how things are, and you can see the fireplace inside. And after that, we went to some of the Roman sites, like the bath and the Roman villa, which, as you can tell, it's really different because the mosaics are fascinating. You can see they had piping and awesome architecture and villas. So that played so well to our course, because studying about these people and their interaction theoretically doesn't really make perfect sense because it's just theoretical. But if you actually go, you can have a full grasp of how these people, how the Celts accepted the Roman, or why wouldn't they accept them, and how would they be fascinated by these newcomers, or invaders, I should say, and how dynamics happened and everything. So the sites were perfect experience to do the actual theoretical learning, which actually happened in the castle, which is fantastic, it's amazing. And after that, we went to some of the Anglo-Saxon sites. So we went to Anglo-Saxon village. If you see it, you can actually have an idea of how things kind of went backwards after the Roman era, because you can see from masonry and from stonework, they just went back to wood and relatively more primitive tools and buildings. Again, going to these places is fascinating because I can actually go and interact with things. So I got the chance to hold a fire steel and actually try to make some fire. And I actually bought one. I have it with me, but I didn't bring it here. So it's fascinating to see how you can actually interact with a lot of things that would be otherwise impossible to experience. The other thing which I just mentioned was we were encouraged to make connections. So on the right, that's me on in front of the field in which the Battle of Hastings is thought to have occurred. So in 1066, and they think somewhere behind me the actual battle happened. But we actually went to different places. So we went to the north to Waltham Abbey, and if you go to that place, you can see that they have a sign that says King Harold was buried here, or this is his tomb, which doesn't make any sense because King Harold Godwinson is usually associated with Battle Abbey, like with the Battle of Hastings. So it's really interesting to see what would motivate these people to claim that, especially after the Saxons lost. It wasn't really popular, the idea of being English as much as being like part of the Norman nobility. So it provokes a lot of thoughts that otherwise wouldn't do. And after that, a main thing we did was that we analyzed architecture. And you can actually, and I learned that we can actually learn a lot about the history of the country through the architecture of the numerous abbeys and cathedrals and religious institutions we went to. So Waltham Abbey on top left, for example, you can tell that there were the construction of the first building was old because the pillars were big. So and you can see the Romanesque. But as it goes up, it gets more Gothic, which suggests that that part of it is more added later, like in a future time. Same thing with Rochester Castle, because you can see that the angular corner of it are older, because with time they got rounder because it's more advanced technology. Same thing with the modern Bailey castles that were constructed by the Normans. We read about them, but it's never like actually going and seeing the mounds they created and how it is. Sorry, I just want to mention that we went to we participated in the archaeology. We did digging in this stable. We found some drainage system. We did we did test pitting, measuring, and plotting. So we experienced everything. That's the only gigantic ruler for surveying. And, well, I don't have enough time to talk about that. Then we did additional activities like archery. We got to participate in some reenactments.
I had nothing to do with that.
We got to try authentic pottage. Some people didn't like, some people liked. It's awesome. I got to try the local culture, so part of that was like food, like ploughman's meal and fish and chips, of course. Lastly, I had the chance to actually go and see the Queen's birthday. So I saw the ceremonies, which were amazing. So it was so many soldiers, and I actually got to take a picture of the Queen and and then, yeah, so again, thank you so much for Dr. Benarski and all the team and everybody that is responsible for arranging everything. It's an excellent experience. Thank you.